Well, hi everybody. It's we should be on there in a second, so we could just say hello because it'll pull it down.
Hello.
Joe Cioffi, Fios One News, Long Island, and Fios One News, New Jersey.
Joe Rao, Fios One News, Lower Hudson Valley. I think we're on the air now.
We certainly are, and you can see
We're sharing the billing. We're sharing the billing tonight with Flo.
Yes, and not from the TV show Alice either.
Oh, from the Progressive insurance company commercials.
Oh, right, yes, that Flo.
Yeah.
Well, there is Florence moving right along. You know, Joe, one of the things and I said this on my YouTube. Oh, he calls now. One moment, please. Hello, who is it?
Hello,
Pronto?
Joe.
Chi parla? Oh, dear Addison.
Hey, buddy.
How are you?
Excellent.
Oh, you
How
got
doing?
those headset things on. Earbuds.
Earbuds.
All right, so
I'm advancing.
So let me bring Monsieur Green into the mix here. Addison Green from the midday hours, who does Fios One News. You do the Valley and Long Island, correct?
Mm-hmm. The land of York.
Oh, so there you are. Good. I called you a few minutes ago and you didn't answer your telephone fast enough.
You're too quick for me.
Okay. You win. All right. Actually, we've got, now we're kind of a foursome here because it's Joe and I and you down in the Brady Bunch screen on the bottom, and we've got Hurricane Florence on the side.
Florence Henderson.
I met Florence Henderson. What a great lady she was. Yeah. She was wonderful. She really was. Sad when she passed away.
But this Florence is not great. Well,
no,
it's great in the sense
this one's got to go, and unfortunately, it looks like it's not going to go right away. What are your thoughts, Mr. Green?
Wow, I'm kind of left a little beside myself based on like what we've been seeing recently with the models, making some unusual turns with this system potentially. I mean, like I think that without a doubt we're going to be seeing a major sustained damage all along the coastal areas of North Carolina, South Carolina, into Virginia as well. Definitely several miles inland to say the least. But this one's certainly going to be packing a punch. I think one for the record books. But in terms of like what happens when the storm starts to approach, I mean, looking at the Euro, the GFS recently, both starting to hint at a little bit more of a southwesterly turn, so to speak.
Right.
With a little bit of a pull from a low developing down across near the Western Caribbean, the Bay of Campeche area, and high pressure up towards the Great Lakes, both hoping to kind of steer things towards the southwest. So if that's the case, that's going to be a massive issue with that right front quadrant of the storm just like hammering some spots for quite a while.
Well, it's all about the upper high. I'm gonna bring up the map, one of the maps, full screen. Hang on one second. Sure. Maps here, courtesy, by the way, folks, as always, from tropicaltidbits.com. And of course, when it comes to making any kind of decisions with regards to hurricanes and tropical storms, you need to consult your local government officials, the National Hurricane Center website, nhc.noaa.gov, or the National Weather Service at weather.gov. We are not able to tell you what you should do for your area because we really don't know what your area is like. You do, your local officials do, and that's where you need to go with regards to decisions you have to make. All right, so I have the GFS up, and I don't know if you can see it.
Yep, I do.
You do.
I'm watching.
Okay, good. So let's look at the upper high, because really everything is about what's going on aloft here. And you've got this upper high that's building in from the Atlantic. Of course, we're seeing the practical results from that, Joe, because we all have bad hair again. The humidity has gone up. At least we don't have we don't have the oppressive heat. Somebody mentioned to me about this cold front that has approached, this weak cold front, and why doesn't this produce an alleyway for it to move up the East Coast? And that's because the ridge just builds over it and the front just completely falls apart. But what happens with Florence is that the ridge splits and then it suddenly builds over the top of it from the Great Lakes into New England. And that's what really causes this to go southwestward, at least from the recent model runs, kind of rakes the Carolina coast, the North and South Carolina coast before it goes inland into South Carolina. And the European is actually a little further south than this. But these are just models, folks. We don't know that this is actually going to happen this way.
Well, this is guidance. So this is computer guidance models. I know a lot of forecasters, they look at this and they take it as fact, but it's only to guide you as to what is going to happen, especially once you get past 4 or 5 days, because after 4 or 5 days, really the models have a tough, it's problematical even for a supercomputer to try to determine, especially in this situation, where a monster storm like this ultimately is going to end up.
No, I agree with you both. There were definitely a lot of uncertainties going towards when we actually get towards landfall. I gotta ask, have you guys ever seen or experienced a storm system with this type of movement before?
There have been some instances of bizarre movements that have occurred off the southeast coast of the United States. I'm trying to recall off the top of my head. I'm long past having that ability. I have to go back and look. But there are a few that have done some weird things where they head up. They head up toward the southeast coast and then they drop southwestward. Betsy did that back in '65. Katrina actually did that initially when it developed and went across Florida before it exploded in the Gulf of Mexico. So with this upper high, this is what's really doing it. You don't have a trough in the east. You don't have any kind of trough in the east, any kind of southerly flow to move it up the east coast. How's it going to get here? It's just not.
I remember a hurricane in 2002. The name was Kyle, and it was very funny. Kyle was like wandering all over the place. It honestly looked like Kyle was drunk. It did a couple of loop-de-loops and wobbling back and forth. But what made it really funny, and I don't remember who it was, maybe it was Avila or one of the National Hurricane Center forecasters, one of the discussions, and this was like discussion number 47. That's how long Kyle was. Oh, yeah,
it was on for a while.
And he started off his discussion by saying, staying alive, ha, 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 Kyle is staying alive. It was very, very funny, but that just gives you an example of sometimes these storm systems really are befuddling for both man and also for the supercomputers as to where they're going to go.
By the way, we should say, first of all, right off the bat, the weather we're getting over the next 3 days has really absolutely nothing to do with the hurricane at all. All it really, if you want to make a remote tie, it's the fact that the atmosphere is basically setting up a tropical atmosphere in the eastern part of the United States for flow to move into. Otherwise, this is the weather we'd be getting, whether there'd be a hurricane in that position or not. And yeah, there will be a couple of downpours to deal with over the next few days. It's going to be humid with self-destructive sunshine. That's when the sun comes out and then suddenly clouds bubble up and you wind up with a couple of downpours or a thunderstorm. Also, I think basically with the initial push of the storm, the way it is, there really isn't going to be much that's going to happen from Virginia north and east. I think even southeastern Virginia, which is under a tropical storm watch, may not wind up getting very much from this initial push with the standpoint of wind and rain. Tidal surge is a different story. As far as our area is concerned, and I think Joe and both of you will agree with me, is that there are no impacts here. In spite of what your governors may tell you, okay, there are no impacts here from this storm through Sunday. Okay, let me make that clear. If you're in Delaware, if you're in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, Long Island, New York, Connecticut, southern New England, there are no impacts through Sunday. The tide issue is new moon, higher than normal tides, a little bit of hurricane action in there with the waves. Tides are going to be running above normal, but that's really about it. Okay, you're on the same page, both of you, with me.
Well, the National Weather Service office in Upton, which is the New York City office, has a small craft advisory through Thursday for hazardous sea conditions.
All right, because there was some rough ocean.
Because of the swells and rough seas and everything. Meanwhile, the Weather Service office at Mount Holly, which is the Philadelphia office, doesn't really emphasize that all that much. In fact, their only advisory for the waters that goes through this evening, due to what you just said, the new moon and the higher than normal tides.
Right.
They have yet to address the possibility of some rough seas or swells or rip currents or whatever. And that may eventually happen. In the next day or two.
And the other thing, by the way, is Saturday and Sunday here could be. I mean, it could be partly sunny.
Yeah,
I think so. With high pressure building on in from the north,
or cloudy to partly sunny. I don't. Where's it going to come from? There's certainly no precip. You're going to be underneath this gigantic upper high that's going to run from the Great Lakes across upstate New York and New England. Outside of some morning low clouds, the weekend to me looks pretty good. So
I agree.
If one person now, if I check on that list, says, "Well, what about Ocean County?" After all I just said, I guarantee you there'll be some. Well, what about Ocean County? Well, we don't zip code forecast.
Well,
it's in New Jersey.
Ocean County. I used to do a radio station in Ocean County.
WOBM.
WOBM, Tom's River, and I often thought about Ocean County as being the, in Chile, in South America, they are long, skinny, and they go all the way well north and well south along the west coast of South America.
Right.
And Ocean County extends pretty well north into north central New Jersey and all the way down south, almost to south, not quite to Cape May, for example, but there are parts of Ocean County go all the way down south. So there's a wide variation that you can have in Ocean County from, now you see, this is age. I mean, I used to rattle these places off.
Joe, I'm with you.
New Smyrna or whatever like that. There was some place in the south end of Ocean County,
right?
That used to sometimes would get more snow in certain situations in places further north or whatever.
Addison, I had to take you off the screen for a second. You're still with us because I'm
here.
I haven't figured out yet how I can get you. How I can separate the screen so I'm able to see the Facebook page comments. And you at the same time.
Oh, see?
There it is. Ania back Pater Nostro, Our Father, Westchester County. No, nothing is happening through Sunday. Now let me just she got it. Thank you. Right, with a name like last name like Our Father in Italian, we appreciate that. Just bear in mind. Now, that doesn't mean that we may not get rains from Florence eventually, because I think we may see some of the remnant rains come later Monday and Monday night when the low starts to move up the Appalachians and you get this next cold front that's going to come through with some really nice chilly air for the second half of next week, and I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely. No more humidity.
Sunil Sundar Raj. The impacts will be at the Jersey Shore. None. Higher than normal tides. Otherwise, nada, nil, zero.
Despite what Murphy said.
What did Murphy say?
Governor Murphy.
And yes, and His Eminence Governor Cuomo in New York. I've 40 years I've been doing this. Okay. 40 years, 32 years in the New York area, all right, okay, and a bunch of other years. From the day one of the things that I always tried to do was go in and read scripts before they went on the air when it came to weather stories to make sure that they were correct. And I have never, ever been able to get ahead of the game, ever. And I've just tossed my hands up when it comes to that.
Well, some of these politicians think that they have enough knowledge to actually make quotes about the science, about atmospheric science, about meteorology. And in the case of Governor Cuomo, for example, Andrew Cuomo, after Sandy passed on by, and after we had cataclysmic flooding, especially over lower sections of Manhattan and parts of Brooklyn and Queens, he brought up the fact that when New York City was first being built or designed,
right,
that we didn't have hurricanes,
yeah, of course,
that we didn't have floods, that we didn't have anything like this. And I did a report for that other news gathering agency I used to work for. We did a 2-part story about climate and global warming or whatever. We brought up what he said, and then we immediately showed a map of all the tropical systems that hit us going back into the early 1800s. In fact, in 1850, Joe, a tropical cyclone literally destroyed Coney Island. And yet, but according to the politicians, that never happened. It never happens in New York.
No, never did.
Up until
this is all new.
Sandy.
Yeah,
Sandy was the.
Well, what about Mayor Bloomberg on the weekend before Sandy telling everybody to just go out and eat lunch and go have a sandwich?
I remember that one. Like, what are you doing?
Then he throws all the weather people under the bus.
Well,
and Cuomo with the Buffalo thing and throwing people under the bus.
What about the day after
Christmas? The lake effect snowmageddon.
The Bloomberg blizzard in 2010.
Right. Of course. There's a list a mile long here.
Yeah.
It's very easy to just get the correct information. I heard phrases today called severe winds and heavy rains and collateral damage. I mean, come on. The hyperbole is just totally not necessary. It's easy to call up Mount Holly and find out what's the right thing to say. It's easy to call Albany. You call Albany. Of course, you've alienated pretty much the weather services across New York State with that whole Buffalo fiasco a few years ago. So I guess they maybe won't take your call. I don't know. Now I'm on a rant. Never mind.
Come back to us.
Let's go to Rick Hill, who says he wants to know about the coastal Texas. Now, that's that system, Rick, that's coming in out of the northwestern Caribbean.
Right.
That has come out of nowhere. The Hurricane Center actually now rates that as I think they had a 70 or 80% chance now of it becoming a tropical depression by between now and Thursday. So that, by the way, is probably having some impact on the track of Florence, because that's actually helping to build the ridge even stronger, which might be what's driving it more, makes that comes to a grinding halt and then rakes the coast as it moves southwestward. Ethan Kerr, I'm just going to quote Ralph Cramden with your question, because he says, I live in Ocean County. How much rain and wind from Florence? Don't be a Weisenheimer, Ethan.
Told you, there's always one.
Let's see. Of course, Jonathan Sachs, you're right. Everybody's going to pile on. There's a good question. Addison, for you, where's the snow? Asked Patrick Ritchie.
I think they got some snow out there in portions of the Rocky Mountains out there in western Montana. You want to go 8,000 feet up in elevation, go right there. No snow for us anytime soon, although I'm not looking forward to any winter storms coming our way just yet.
Now, James Kaplan says, do we think that this is all going to continue as we go into October? The activity of tropical activity.
I have my theory. Of course, my original theory didn't play out too well with the homegrown storm nonsense.
Yeah.
I think my guess is that we've seen this amazing burst of activity right now where everything is spinning, and in the tropics. I think once this period plays itself out, the atmosphere, I'm guessing, may quiet down for a week or so and just sort of a recharge, and we might have one of those stretches where you look out in the tropics and the Atlantic and it's hard to find a cloud anywhere. But then I'm thinking there'll probably be another firing up of a couple of storms during October. Why not? It's still early enough.
You know how I would answer that, and you brought this up to me, is that in 1961 there was no tropical cyclone or hurricane activity. And
in
then
August
of 1961, and then all of a sudden in September, all heck broke loose, and we had, 7 different systems that took shape? Now, this looks like something similar to what's happening this summer. We didn't have very much in the way, I think, what do we have, 2 named storms in August?
Yes.
And now all of a sudden...
and none one of them were hurricanes, I believe. We didn't have any hurricanes in August, I don't think.
Well, I mean, what I'm saying is if you want to try to match up 61 to maybe this year, why don't we take a look and see what happened in October of 61? Was the fun and games continuing, or did it slow down, or did it completely stop? I would use that as the benchmark, or trying to figure out what the heck is going to happen, much beyond this month of September.
Addison, because a few people are asking about, with areas, say, just this will cover a few people's general questions regarding, say, interior North Carolina, South Carolina, the western part of the state of Virginia, West Virginia, those areas. After this goes inland, we're going to have to deal with the remnant low. So, what do you think with regards to rainfall with that?
Definitely, you're going to be seeing enhanced rainfall amounts coming on in as soon as you go, say, west of Raleigh and past Charlotte. Anywhere getting close towards the Appalachian Mountains, you're going to be dealing with enhanced rainfall rates just due to orographic lift. But once you get away from even west of 95, you're going past the low country, as they call it, and you're still going to be squeezing out a lot of rain. But a lot of these areas, they have had some of their wettest summers they've seen in years. So the ground is super saturated, and you're going to be getting the chance for adding piles of rain on top of it. And some of these areas have most recently just started recovering, or they already went through the finalization recovering from, I believe, Matthew a few years ago, that massive flooding event that went down up across in South Carolina, Columbia specifically, North Carolina as well. I think it was about 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, that ravaged the area. So a lot of these areas are not going to hit hard again, just as they're done recuperating from what they happened to be having before.
Wasn't Matthew Addison? Wasn't Matthew the storm that was going to impact North Carolina, some part of North Carolina? They had a big football game, college football game, scheduled on the same night that they were anticipating something like an atrocious amount of rain, like 10 or 15 inches of rain. I seem to remember that there was a big sporting event in North Carolina. I think it was.
I think that might have been a pro football game. I think that might have been the Carolina Panthers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Didn't we also get?
Could be wrong, but it was definitely a weekend sporting event.
And didn't we all? We also wound up, as I remember, there were all sorts of weird things that were supposed to happen with Matthew, because there was Hurricane Nicole was to the east, and as it was moving northward, the models were going insane, showing all these like really weird loops, including loops that took it back into the Gulf of Mexico. And I think it just wound up basically becoming a frontal wave, and it moved up, and we actually got some rain out of it, if I remember correctly, for a period of time, and that was about it. But this, I think, is going to play a little differently because it's trapped down. Florence is going to be trapped down there. I'm wondering, I guess the question that's coming to my mind is, what's it going to be strength-wise when it gets to the coast? And I think that depends on, is it still moving at 17 miles an hour, or does it slow down, which is what it's forecast to do, where the circulation gets partly over land, and that may weaken it. But I wonder, how much this may get to a Category 5 for a brief time in the next 24, 36 hours or so, and then after that, it's anybody's guess. But I think it's a good shot for coming in as a 4.
I would not be surprised if it came in as a 4 or possibly even a 5. We got the Gulf Stream, just like maybe like 150 miles offshore, that narrow band of like maybe 50 miles where the water is like upper 80s, close to 90 degrees. So it goes over that. There's no wind shear coming on in. There's no dust or nothing. It will just get explosively.
I think the one thing that stops it from coming in as a 5 is that if it slows down to say under 5 miles an hour, it's going to really, you're going to have, there's going to be time with the circulation over land. There's actually a shelf of cool water between the Gulf Stream and the shoreline. I mean, it's not overly cool. If it's relatively bath water, but it's not warm enough to support a Cat 5 for, however many miles it is, which is only a handful. But, if you're sitting over, it's 50 miles and your center's sitting over there for 10 hours, there's going to be an issue. If it was moving at like 17, 18, 20 miles an hour as it was crossing in there, then I would say, okay, probably has a shot to hold on to it. But I'm thinking it won't. But it's got to get there first, so we may be arguing about something that may not happen.
You're right. I mean, regardless of what category it comes in as, 3, 4, 5, it's still going to slam into the coast with a significant impact, especially areas from Wilmington all the way up towards the Outer Banks. A lot of those areas, low-lying areas, just the storm surge alone, 6 to 12 feet. I mean, imagine the devastation that's going to happen to those coastal communities. A lot of those areas, thank goodness, this is not the peak of tourist season anymore. We are past the summer months. So a lot of people that would normally be there aren't there, but still the residents that live there are going to have to deal with this for quite some time. And I was curious, you guys, when you're talking about the storm system coming on in, before we had Harvey, it was hard to fathom 3, 4 feet of rain.
Right.
How do you even put that into perspective to tell that to the general public? And I was even having a hard time wrapping my mind around them, like, how does that even happen here? But now with Florence coming on, and we're seeing 1 to 2, maybe 3 feet of rain for some spots, it's not out of the question. I mean, this is just something that I hope we don't see is becoming more of the norm as opposed to just a rogue statistic.
No, the Weather Prediction Center on their QPF quantitative precipitation page, they are forecasting in the Richmond, Virginia area something on the order.
Ask and you shall receive.
Something on the order of about 10 or 15 inches of rain. And oh wow!
I've displaced Addison in the process.
I'm gone.
Hang on, I'll put you in the West. How's that?
All right, just hang out west. Fine.
Hang on.
Shove me in the corner.
I mean, the page that I was looking at from the Hurricane Center, which was created by the Weather Prediction Center, had like a little red blob.
Well, right there's the purple that's in, I know it's a little small on this map, but this is WPC's 7-day forecast.
Right.
So that purple area is, I think that's supposed to be 20 inches in coastal North Carolina.
Remember, they had to have a new legend come around when Harvey came on it. It just went off the charts.
Right.
They had to just start measuring by, every 4 or 5 inches.
Well, you know what? Depending on the track, we might see, I think you're going to see that area probably move around some, and you might see some area numbers adjust higher. You might see some area numbers adjust lower, depending on, where landfall is and, what does it do once it's inland. I think, it comes up the Appalachians early next week. We get some of the remnant rains from this. That'll be later Monday night into Tuesday. Cold front coming in from the Great Lakes will be swinging it offshore. I don't know what what's going to be left. If sometimes with these things you could have a core circulation that stays vibrant all the way through. We saw that happen with Alberto earlier this year when it went up to the Great Lakes and it was still, you could see it on the radar. If that happens, you probably could somebody could wind up here with several inches of rain or more. But I'm not going to sit here on Tuesday and forecast this for a week from today until we see, we have to let the hurricane play itself out first before we can think about what we're going to get here.
And I think this Joe and Joe is going to have to play itself out because we're coming up on 10 o'clock.
Oh, yeah, we got to go.
And we have to do some work.
Yeah, Addison, tell us tell everybody where you are tomorrow.
Guys, I'll be covering Files One News, Long Island, Files One News, Hudson Valley from noon to 5. We're talking about, the muggy air with us around. Also, of course, Florence, where is it going, and the big impact it's going to have for the Carolinas, as well as potentially what it could impact our neck of the woods as we go through your extended 7-day forecast. So don't forget, tune in for that.
By the way, you realize, Addison, that we've been on for 25 minutes. And I have yet to be passive-aggressive with you.
I was hoping you would get by without doing anything. No, I'm just kidding.
Were you thinking about it? Were you thinking through this? Is it now? Is he gonna say something now?
It's possible.
It's possible.
You still have like 6-7 minutes.
All right. Well, no. I'm gonna be kind tonight. I'm tired, actually. I've done 3 live streams today. I did 2 YouTube live streams. Both went over an hour. And now this live stream. So I'm just like, my mind has lost its creative juices, Addison. Even
I'll have to catch you on a more work day.
Even I occasionally have to throw in the towel.
And if you're going to be in the vicinity of Deer Park out on Long Island this coming Sunday.
That's right. I will be there. This will actually be a good time to come out to Deer Park, to the Deer Park Library, and with your bottle of Deer Park spring water. And I'll be there at 2 o'clock. We'll be there for a good hour and a half. What usually winds up happening is everybody gets so into it that we wind up hanging out in the parking lot afterward and talking. But I'll be there. We'll be able to talk. We was going to talk about hurricanes and hurricane season. Well, guess what? We'll probably still have Florence front and center somewhere, and we can discuss all the things that went into this. And
I'm sure that somebody will bring up something like, well, with all of these hurricanes and tropical systems, does that have any meaning for the upcoming winter season?
Right, and the answer is no.
No.
So before anybody even asks the question, the answer is no. All right, folks, thanks for being with us tonight. Really appreciate it.
One more thing, Meteorologist Brittany Bohr is on Files One News New Jersey with me.
That's right.
And His Holiness
His Holiness Terrence Cardinal Fitzgerald tomorrow morning, Brian Fitzgerald, and Jeffrey. Let me call Joe on Skype without telling him ahead of time, Banson, who called me this morning while I was YouTube's live streaming and threw him on I had to just kind of scramble in the middle of my show. But that's all right. I can do those kind of things. I called you ahead of time, Addison. You didn't answer the phone.
Well, at least I knew you called.
I was
so that's why I got
I
ready.
was deeply hurt that you didn't answer.
Hey, you want me to just stand by waiting?
Well, of course.
All right, next time I'm just gonna be like,
you knew I was going to call you. You knew I was going to call you tonight. You begged me to be on this show.
This is prime time. I gotta get my 15 minutes.
Let's before anybody, Addison, we kind of do this from time to time. We get along really, really well, and I jab very sharply, and he takes them wonderfully, which.
I have all the wounds in my back right now.
Exactly. So if I didn't respect Addison, I wouldn't do it. I'd ignore you. That's when you. That's when you.
Same here, buddy. You too, Joe.
Notice I'm being quiet while all this is going on.
Yes, you're very close.
Avoid the whole situation.
All right, we're saying good night. Good night.
All right, good night, guys. Have a good one.
Good night.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.